Yes, we are live. I've already invited Bitaza Thailand on Instagram to join me on the live right now. I'm just waiting um for them to accept me. Hi everyone. Who's here? How's your Thursday? Let's see. We'll just wait for our viewers to tune in and to start watching in there. Okay. Hi everyone. It's another Bixie Thursday, of course, with us here at Bixie. So I hope that you guys invite all of your friends and everyone from your network to tune in, especially this Thursday, because this is another special topic, like worthy to be to learn from, or that's you know. So it's because it's exciting because we have Pitaza Thailand with us, particularly Miss Didi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi,
Hi,
Miss
Phil.
Bill.
We're already live on Instagram and on Facebook. I think I have to add you on Instagram.
Yeah,
Yes.
1 minute.
Okay. I sent you an invite. So it's 6:27 time check. It's 6:27 in Manila. And in Didi's place in Thailand, it's already 5:27. So we would like to welcome everyone from the Philippines and also from Thailand who's tuning in right now and who's watching with us.
Hi,
What's that?
Eunice. Hi, Bill. Hi, Bixie
Hi.
community.
Hello.
So 2 minutes, then we can start. Like what I was mentioning to Didi a while ago, like before we go live. I'm really looking forward to this talk, Attorney Bill, because I can see how enthusiastic and how driven Didi is to spread awareness and to spread financial literacy and how women should be educated about it and how women should be involved because usually I think they think that everything about finances is pertains only to men. Like women are
Yeah.
not that knowledgeable or not that empowered to talk about finances, saving, investing, cryptocurrency, and stock market. So we have here DB right now, who is in Thailand, all the way from Thailand, to educate us about it. That's why our talk tonight is entitled "Make It Right." It's about choosing the right investment, basic trading and stock market, and about cryptocurrency. So I think we just have to wait for a few people to come in because I guess we still have 1 minute before we can.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. So, hi, Didi, and hi, Eunice. Ayan. I hear an echo. Tama ba? May narinig akong echo. So,
Hold on.
lower na lang yung mic for
Yes,
IG.
yes. I lower the IG mode on
There.
my phone.
Okay. I thought it was raining, but may dumaan lang pala na car. So, hi, everyone. Hi. Good evening, everyone. So my background is a little bit different today because I'm working from outside. Been working outside the entire day since this morning. So yeah, I hope you guys and ladies, of course, are listening tonight. Sorry, we have a very empowered and enthusiastic guest. So yeah, so if you're watching right now via your IG or LinkedIn, or if you're on LinkedIn, or if you are on Facebook, we share the live to your friends and your network, and we'll all learn together tonight. Ayan. So, Eunice, ano pa ba? Ano pa bang pwede natin gawin? We're still early, ha? We usually wait naman for like 2-3 minutes after 6:30 before we
Yes,
go on with
we
the
are
live,
early.
yeah?
How? Wait. I think there will be some people, well, not some. I think there will be a lot of people watching us, not only from Manila, Philippines, but also
Mm-hmm.
from Thailand. Am I right, Miss Didi? I'm sure a lot of your colleagues or a lot of followers of Betaza Thailand will also be tuning in because, like what Didi mentioned to me a while ago, this talk with Dixie is one of their first rather collaborations with a company wherein they she gets to talk about financial literacy and all.
Yeah.
So I told Didi that
Hello.
it's an honor and it's a privilege for Dixie to be chosen by Didi to be one of its first partners or yes collaborator
Yes.
for this talk.
Thank you
Hello.
so much. Okay, so let me give a little bit of introduction about myself. So I'm Didi, the Chief Communications Officer of Bethesda, and we are originated and we hold a license of brokerage for digital assets here in Thailand. However, we definitely have a plan for expansion and especially in our Southeast Asia region. So this invitation has been coming at the very perfect timing for us, and definitely the Philippines is one of the market that we would love to explore, and seeing the trends and seeing the adoption of cryptocurrency and also digital assets in such markets as the Philippines, but also Indonesia, also Vietnam, and all of our surrounding neighboring countries. So I'm quite excited to be talking today, and I think that though the topic will be a lot about choosing the right investments and a bit of strategy, I think because understanding that the community of Big C followers are the majority are women, and I think having this opportunity here today to offer some representation, that women can also exist, and not just exist or survive, but thrive in this industry that would seem a little bit intimidating in the beginning. So let me just, if it's okay with you guys, let me just say hello to some of our followers in Thailand, and that I could let them know that we will be actually doing a recap in Thai.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you guys don't mind, let me just say hello.
Yes.
สวัสดีค่ะเพื่อนๆบิทัสซ่าที่ติดตามดูดิดี้อยู่นะคะวันนี้มีโอกาสพิเศษที่ได้รับเชิญนะคะจากคอมมูนิตี้ที่ชื่อ Big C นะคะที่เน้นเรื่องการช่วยเหลือให้ผู้หญิงนะคะมีพลังงานมากขึ้นแล้วก็เป็นชุมชนที่เรียกว่าเน้นให้ความรู้ด้านไม่ว่าจะเป็นการลงทุนหรือว่าคริปโตเคอเรนซีหรือว่าเรื่องอื่นๆนะคะไม่ว่าจะเป็นเจ้าของธุรกิจเล็กๆหรือว่าผู้หญิงที่ดูอยู่ทั่วไปนะคะวันนี้ดิดี้จะคุยเป็นภาษาอังกฤษแต่ว่าเดี๋ยวทีมงานบิทัสซ่าจะมีการแปลเป็นภาษาไทยให้แน่นอนแต่ว่าเพื่อนๆที่เป็นแฟนบิทัสซ่าที่พอฟังภาษาอังกฤษออกนะคะก็ขอให้ยังไงส่งคอมเมนต์มาหรือว่าถ้ามีคำถามอะไรก็สามารถร่วมสนุกได้เลยค่ะวันนี้ก็ถือว่าสนุกแล้วก็น่าตื่นเต้นมากเพราะว่าทางบิทัสซ่าประเทศไทยเองเนี่ยก็เรียกว่าเราคุยกันใน AMA มาสักพักนึงแล้วเนาะก็วันนี้ก็ถือว่ามาเป็นแขกรับเชิญของคอมมูนิตี้อื่นนะคะเราก็จะมาคุยเพราะว่าจริงๆประเทศฟิลิปปินส์ก็เป็นหนึ่งในมาร์เก็ตที่ทางบิทัสซ่า Global สนใจที่จะไปนะคะไม่ว่าจะเป็นแล้วก็ประเทศอื่นๆในภูมิภาคเอเชียอาคเนย์เช่นกันนะคะก็ยังไงเดี๋ยวขอดิกลับไปคุยเป็นภาษาอังกฤษก่อนแต่ว่าขอบคุณทุกคนที่มาร่วมให้กำลังใจนะคะ
Thank you so much, Miss Didi, for that extravagant greeting to the rest of the Thais watching us tonight, and I would like to thank them in advance for tuning in with us all the way from that country. So, hi everyone, it's another Big C Thursday with us here at Big C. So, this Thursday, our talk is about make it right, choosing the right investment for you, basics in trading, and cryptocurrency. So of course, before we begin with the talk proper, I would like to make a short welcome, or rather an introduction about what we do here at Big C. So to begin, of course, what is Big C? Big C is a platform that connects women who wants to invest with the knowledge, network, and tools to start investing. So, from what we do here at Big C, we would like to make a disclaimer that we are not giving financial advice, but we are here simply to empower women or to educate women as to make wise financial investments and wise financial decisions. So, where can you reach us? Of course, we have our website. And we have our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter page, and most especially we have our app that you can download from the Play Store and from Play Store, yes, for Google, and from the App Store. So it's called Big C. So just type in there, search for Big C, and then the app will appear, and it's absolutely for free. We will not ask you for any charges or for any fees before you can access the app. And all you have to do is simply register. Again, the app is for free. You can register and make up your own profile for free. Big C will not charge you for anything. But in the event that someone will like charge you and will represent themselves that they are from Big C, please you have to call our attention and you have to contact us about it. So there. What else? So without further ado, I would start with the intro of our speaker for today, which I'm very, very, very excited about. So, Miss Didi, or also known with her name is Wimonpun Wibunma, or Didi. She is the Chief Communications Officer at Bitasa Company, Thailand since 2018. Miss Wimonpun, or Didi, is in charge of corporate image, reputation, corporate and marketing communications, publicity, public relations, and human resources development. Didi also oversees strategic partnerships, stakeholders engagement, and business development. Didi has over 14 years of extensive experience in various industries, both in agency and in-house roles. Didi has consulted and managed brands from various industries, including manufacturing, tourism, fashion, automotive, and financial technology. While in her corporate communications advisor role for Asia Pacific at a multinational Australian packaging manufacturer, she led her team to win the Global CEO Outperformance Award. Didi has also previously handled public relations for multinational companies such as MasterCard, Royal Enfield, Skyscanner, San Pellegrino, and Lufthansa German Airlines. Lastly, Didi's marketing experience includes managing international brands such as Michael Kors, Victoria's Secret, Bath and Body Works, and La Martina. So, Attorney Vil, I am turning the floor to you right now to further introduce or to start the program proper with our guest speaker for this evening.
So again, hello Didi, and hello everyone who's watching both from the Philippines and in Thailand. So hello everyone. Hi, good evening. It's already good evening in the Philippines. It's 6:40 p.m. But in Thailand it's still 5:40 p.m. So I think it's still a good afternoon. So before we jump into the topics that Didi mentioned earlier, so Didi, how did you start with this whole thing that when I was talking to you 2 weeks ago about this topic, you were really empowered, you were very enthusiastic about it. But can you tell us about your beginnings?
Thank you, and thank you for the really long introduction. After hearing several minutes of my history, number one, it makes me feel really old. Just kidding. I would use the term accomplished instead, because I've actually been in this space of communications, marketing, publicity for over 15 years. And I suppose, listening to the full introduction, you could see that I actually come from quite various backgrounds, but nothing too much about tech or investments or even financial industry. So it's a very good question that you asked, how I got introduced to cryptocurrency. So I suppose the opportunity came to me around the year 2018, when I met with the founding members as well as the co-founders of Betaza. The moments that I learned about this, I actually was not so convinced, right? Because that was kind of the year that hype and a lot of the bad press around cryptocurrency was going around. I'm going to say, kind of similar to several other times that the market had gone through instability. And, I had this perception that investments were not for me. I was not into numbers, and I was not, really interested in having any savings. I kind of took it for granted that, whatever I would earn would be enough. But thankfully, one of the co-founders kind of, shed a light onto the fact that, it really doesn't matter how much you make. What matters more is how much you invest. And that's really how you build a future. And when I thought about it like that, I kind of also realized that that spoke a lot of volume, and it's not just in terms of investment in terms of financial, but I would say that I had learned that any type of investment, thinking long term, or having a vision in the future was important. And I suppose what spoke to me and what was quite interesting to me about cryptocurrency is decentralization. So when I had learned, the more fundamental side of cryptocurrency and this decentralized financial world, I became a lot more interested. And, taking on this opportunity or taking this leap of faith, I had ended up one of the founding members of the platform. And at the beginning, I also realized that being a part of something that was being built from the ground up, from scratch, was a very unique opportunity. And I'm really one to never turn down an opportunity. There's nothing worse than wasted opportunities or wasted time. So I realized, that was the year that I was going to say yes and open my mind to an industry that I would have been scared of or intimidated by otherwise. And through training and through being given knowledge, I slowly and surely built the team here at Betaza, and it had been such a crazy journey. So I suppose the one thing that I found that was quite interesting was that I had been a storyteller and a brand builder for so many years in my life, and all the brands or all the stories were rather strategic and fabricated, whilst a lot of the stories and a lot of the things that I had witnessed here in the industry had been very organic, and I may dare say life-changing. So the more I learn about it, the more I think about cryptocurrency as not just an industry, but it's also a way of life. And when you think about the brands that I'd worked with before, all the brands that you mentioned, they were quite lifestyle or they were quite retail. But I often say that actually cryptocurrency is not so much a financial technology business, but it's more the people business, because of how many lives we touch and how much impact this technology as a whole would touch on people's lives. So I became fascinated, and then the more I learned, the more I realized that what I had known, what I thought I knew for the 10-11 years of my life prior to this, was not enough, right? It was a humbling experience for me to realize that the more you learn, the more you come to a realization that there's so much more. So, every day became more opportunities to take on more challenges, and also, I suppose, become a voice, and then become a real life representation of women like us, who often find ourselves very distant and very far, or even intimidated by the industry, by the idea of even just money management and investments, and tech, and then I think when you look into terms that you don't understand, it's often intimidating, right? And I think that what I had been given had been a space, and I suppose kind of knowledge sharing. So here I am, passing it on.
Okay, okay. Yeah, thank you, Didi. I was actually very inspired when I was looking at your bio, the bio you shared, and even when you were talking, even when just you were talking right now, um, you had a long career on like retail brands and all, but and it makes me feel less intimidated because I'm also at a point in my life where I can say that, and I think I'm also speaking on behalf of many women right now. We are on in this point where we're still like very much beginners when it comes to digital assets, cryptocurrency. But at this point, your story, like you said, you're a storyteller, and your story is actually inspiring because even from becoming like a brand manager or a brand builder, we can also like explore more opportunities, and like you said, there's so much more to learn in the digital space. So that makes me move to my first question, my first Miss Universe question, and there are actually two, so I'm gonna like combine them. So the question is, how do we choose the right investment for us, and how is it done right now with all the modern technology and all those stuff? So how do we choose it? How do we choose the right investment that are fit for us?
Mhm. Thank you for the question, and I'm going to relate back to what Eunice was saying before, that we're essentially gathered here to share some knowledge and personal story, and definitely not financial advice, because I think that there is no kind of set in stone or rule of thumb in terms of what gets you richer faster, because when you hear people giving advice like that, get rich fast, more times than not, it's anything that is too good to be true is, and likely to be true. So I think that, like, for me, what I would share today would be kind of more an overview of how what are some of the key areas, or what are some of the key factors that you may factor in when you consider investment. I'm going to say number one is before making a decision on what to invest on, I would say the number one would be how much risk you could take on, because all investments come with risk, right? Like, and this is not just in terms of financial. I think any type of investment, time spent with friends, right? Leaving your house, these are all risk. When we do something, when we take any kind of action, we must also think, okay, is the risk worth the gains? And I would say that the same thing applies for any type of investment, whether it's the traditional type or a digital. So I think the number one is identifying how much you are willing to, or are you capable of taking risk, right? And then if you get some gains, great. But if there are losses, how would your life be affected from this decision? And thinking long term, a lot of people talk about, a lot of press covers the growth or the gains of some of these investment opportunities or options or tokens, and not enough about it is about the fundamentals, right? So I think that when you look at the gains, you must also question, wait, at which cost, at what cost, right? Like, where is this all of this coming from? So I'm gonna say the second part would be identifying the type of tokens or cryptocurrency that you would be interested in. And a lot of the times, and I'm going to say maybe even most of the time, reading about what exactly it does, instead of just looking at the prices and profits and loss. I would say that to understand the fundamentals, what the token does, right? And if the token belongs to some kind of ecosystem, what does this ecosystem or what does this project do to the industry? And at the same time, I would say also to look into the team behind it, right? So there's some due diligence in understanding. I would say the same way as investment in, perhaps equity or stocks, where you look into, this is the company that I believe in. Then you look into the leadership team or the management team. You look into what value proposition they are bringing to the market or their audiences. So it would be the same thing. So, identifying risk, understanding the investment options. And I suppose another one would be, I guess, how long you plan to hold, right? How long you anticipate your investment to be. And I may say that I think that in all investments, but including cryptocurrency, I think that when you aim for longer term investments, then you're investing in the technology, right? Instead of the short gains. So I would say that all of the investors, all of the users of our platform are advised to kind of have a clear limit as to how long or how much patience is required when the market goes through volatility. And for sure, definitely, as in all of our disclaimers, we talk about how volatile cryptocurrency is, but also the entire stock market, I'm going to say, in this day and age, right? So I think identifying your own factors, right, then you can make a sound decision. And I guess the last one would be where would you get your information from, right? And all the information, all the knowledge has to then come from trustworthy sources. You have to also identify, right, like if you are listening to other people, who are they, right? And what would be their hidden agenda, right? Like we often witness people where people follow other people, and it's also kind of a mass psychology situation where you're reading tweets or you're chatting with someone on Telegram or some kind of communities, and people like to give advice, right? And then when you are new, when you have less experience, it seems convenient to just kind of follow what's trending on Twitter, and you kind of follow the mass. But I would say that should come with also your own research, because often, and again, right, not just in cryptocurrency investment, but in life, when someone is coming to tell you or give you suggestions, and sometimes you have to also question, wait, why are you telling me to do all these things, right? Are there some benefits in it for them? So I would say that these would be my 4 factors.
Okay, thank you, Didi. So these are good pointers now. So I'm just gonna do points, major points. Number 1, identifying risk. That's very important. I always do that. How much I could afford to let go, and how much I could afford to lose at a certain point. So if you're risk averse, or if you have if you're risk averse, or if you're okay with like getting there and assuming higher risk. Number two, identifying or understanding rather tokens and other investment options. That's also very nice. That also entails research. So last night, I after our tech run with Didino, I downloaded the Bithaza app. And it's very interesting. There's a lot of options there, and I started reading. About them, and to be honest, there's a lot of info out there, but I just focused on the top two for me last night. So it's added info, and but yeah, it's nice to understand what I'm going for. Number three, of course, due diligence, as she mentioned, which relates to where do you get your info, because there are fraudulent people out there, and they could take your money, they could take advantage of you, especially us who are still beginning. And of course, how long do you plan to stay there or to put your money in there? These are very good and practical tips. So thank you,
Yeah,
Didi. And yeah.
actually, let me add one more thing. And thank you for mentioning the Betaza platform that is now also like available for anywhere, the users from anywhere around the world. I would say that the last point that I forgot to mention, obviously, is that you should invest only with the people that you trust, i.e., a regulated and licensed business. In the Betaza's case, we are compliant. In Thailand, as mentioned at the beginning, we hold a license, a brokerage license for digital assets. So I think that should be a practice, and perhaps not even just cryptocurrency, but any other investments that you make. There are really a lot of scammers. There are really a lot of cyber criminals out there. There really are a lot of websites that promise a lot of kind of Ponzi scheme looking, too much gains at not enough fundamentals. And then so you look into the credibility of where you would put your money in. I think the same way when you think of a bank, right? Or when you think of like walking to a place versus some dark alleyway, and there's some guy with a little wooden table taking your money, and then he tells you come back tomorrow and we give you 20% more. Suspicious. So I think that's the last thing that I forgot to mention, right? Like I think compliance and it really support the due diligence that we mentioned before. Thank you so much for mentioning this, Bill.
Okay. Yes, I'm very enthusiastic about that because recently I I experienced some, unfortunate things which are likened similar to a fraud, but that's in the past, and we're moving forward. But yeah, as mentioned earlier, I mentioned as you mentioned earlier, where do you get the information from, right? From licensed and from from people who you think are sure out there. That's why in Bixi we offer, or we put in some knowledge section inside the app. So if you don't have the app, you please download it. We have a bunch of information out there. We have articles, videos, and of course we have our live events every Thursday, such as this one. So download the app. It's on the screen right now. The QR codes are on the screen right now, and of course go on and join us during our live events, such as this one every Thursday. So at least you have an overview of these tips, or which way to go, which way to get information from. So thank you so much for flashing that, Eunice. Let me move on to my next question to Didi. So many of the audience, including myself, and I think also including Eunice, no, we are quite new to trading, cryptocurrency, and like you said earlier, it's quite intimidating because when you are exposed to this, these terms which are like big, we feel intimidated, or like some people are intimidated, but research a bit, but some people would be hesitant, or and some people would be very eager. So for us who are new to trading, who are scared, intimidated, or eager at the same time, what do you think would be the best strategy, or what are the basics for it, and what are the current trends in the market that we should that you could advise us to to look at or to consider?
Mm-hmm. I would say personally, right? Like again, not financial advice, but I think that as a newbie, there is always it's quite useful to start small, right? Like and so coming back to my point before with identifying your ability to handle the risk, and there is really no rush. So when you try and you kind of do a sample investment size, that would be the first case, so that if you gain, that's great, but if you lose, then you consider that as kind of your lesson learned. And I suppose that another way to consider is this very simple trading strategy called dollar cost average, or DCA. This means that you have kind of like a schedule where, let's say, you invest the same amount every such and such period of time. So let's say, for example, you look into investment every Monday, for example, or for the first of each month. So you kind of allocate your income or your revenue as your investment budget, and then you do it at the same time, at the same amount, and so that this distributes the risk. And even though so this is the way to invest. And even though when let's say that one of the tokens or one of the cryptocurrency options is seems to be skyrocketing or doing really well, what personally I like to do is also when you like to cash out, there's also a strategy to also DCA, where you just like the way in, you on the way out, you could also consider kind of cashing out a little bit here and there in a schedule as well, so that if it goes down, you don't lose opportunities, but if it goes up, then you're not kind of losing the opportunities to gain more. So this is the most simple advice. That is also a strategy that a lot of people are using. And or another way, it's very simple, where you just buy long term and you forget about it, right? This is like kind of a hold on to dear life approach, where you kind of have an idea or a goal that you would like to commit to, you get to it, and then you lock it away. And then coming back to my point with identifying how long you would like to wait, right? Like how long you're able to wait. So you're not anxiously looking at the application, you're not anxiously looking at the graph. You come back and maybe check on it 3 or 5 years from now, right? So and if you're a believer in the technology, even though when you watch the news and you witness the kind of the economical updates around the world, that you're investing in technology, and that once the time comes, you can go back and check on your investment. And with the trend that things are looking, even though there are bear market and bull market and its cycles, if you believe in the long-term vision, then hopefully, and I would be quite confident to say that if you look at the history, right, of some of the notable established currencies, they have been going up, even though there are some drops along the way. So that could be a way for a newbie to it decrease some stress from over checking and over being very stressed about your investment. And these would be the type of advice that even on the Bataza page, whether it's Bataza Global, which content is all in English for you guys, or even on Bataza Thailand that we have also in the Thai language. These are some of the simple suggestions that we talk about. Oh, wait, you asked about trends, right? So I will say, right, that currently the entire market, and not just cryptocurrency, right? All the investment market is going through kind of, all of this right now as a reaction to hyperinflation, right? Like some geopolitical factors, and just so on and so forth. But I think that understanding the narratives of cryptocurrency, right, is quite important. So if you guys recall, last year there was a pretty big hype, or even the year before that, about decentralized finance. That was quite groundbreaking when you think about, a lot of the financial or banking services that were made available in a decentralized manner. And that trend kind of came and then became pretty saturated, and then the bubble kind of burst with not enough people investing in the too many options. And from there, we kind of entered this metaverse, as well as game finance, where a lot of the projects became games or more interactive Web3 situation, where people log into these ecosystems and would play games. And I think Axie Infinity, for example, was pretty big in the Philippines. So that was also a trend, like kind of last year. And a lot of the projects got tested by evolving with time, and with a lot of the interest that people were pouring out to them. And then let's say like when there are a lot of people, when there's a huge adoption, then there are a lot of expectation, whether it's gameplay, whether it's gains, and I think that it, as a trend, it was really notable to see how far innovation could go, to kind of engage us, and then follow. Well, during the same amount of time, we kind of experience, one of the most notable, I'm going to call it network, I guess, with Ethereum being kind of like the infrastructure for all these other projects. And then that became quite, traffic jams, as well as, the transactions became quite expensive. And then you see a lot of the other blockchains that were offering alternatives. So those kind of the new blockchains were emerging late last year, and so on and so forth. So now I think that it's quite difficult to identify outright the current trends, but I think it's important to understand the narratives of the different cryptocurrency and what each project does. So this is going back to one of the key factors that I mentioned at the beginning, where you just kind of have to understand what each token does, or what each ecosystem really does. So it's for me quite difficult to kind of pinpoint trends, especially in the current market situation. So I would like to, I think, invite everyone to kind of look back at the past few years and catch a trend or a pattern, and then understanding that when institutional investors become involved, or when you look at a lot of the traditional companies that started taking roles or contributing to the industry, right? Last year, a lot of people were talking about a lot of companies who started investing in cryptocurrency, or even countries, right? So there's definitely great news about mass adoption there, right? But again, I think that there's so much going on in the space, and there's so much information. What we are discussing today could also be something that gets outdated. So I think my overall answer to that would be kind of understanding the narrative in the present day. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Thank you, Didi. I was writing down some points that you mentioned about, like, understanding, like you mentioned, understanding the narratives of the present day. The present day is all about the metaverse right now. I've been hearing the word metaverse since what, during the pandemic. And when you were mentioning about, like, the two kinds of people, like, those who are um, who would like who want to trade and they want to check their investments every day, and there could be a group also who would want to, like, to lock it in there and not stress about it. I was thinking, I think I'm the second type, but then I'm also FOMO. I have the fear of missing out, so I also want to try the first one. So, but yeah, it's always an option. But at the end of the day, like you said, it's all about understanding the narrative of, the present day of what's happening right now. And I think that's a good summation. That's a good summary of like understanding the market trends, especially for beginners like me. I'm seeing a lot of questions in our chat, no, but before we move to that, I think I have one last question, and then we will go to the questions from the audience. Thank you, guys and ladies, of course, for putting in a lot of questions tonight. But for the last question, I'm going to ask Lily. You mentioned earlier that crypto isn't just digital technology. It's not just, like some technology out there for some people, but it's a way of life. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So my question would be, how does it relate to our daily life? And I remember when we were discussing about your topic today, you mentioned of, there's some women actually in Korea who are on their top, who are on the who are on the top of their crypto game. So I think you can, I don't know, maybe you can tell us more about it, and of course to encourage and also to inspire all the women here who are wanting to start to make cryptocurrency a part of their everyday life. Yeah.
Sure. And thank you so much for that question. This is something that Betaza has been driving for quite some time, because we believe that the buying and selling for profit is only one of the use cases of the blockchain. Blockchain as a technology has so much more potential to assist all of us in everyday life, whether you're a business owner, whether it's just for remittance, cross country, cross borders. So let me start by mentioning this in two parts, I suppose. When you invest in cryptocurrency and you feel that you've reached your goal in terms of, let's say, profit, it's often that you wonder, oh, how do I, get the cryptocurrency out? How do you cash out? Then, how do you use that the gains in everyday life? So, at Betaza, we've been fortunate enough to have developed a solution for this, which is in partnership with a company called T2P here in Thailand, as well as Visa. So we are Thailand's first and only Visa card that has been, given a go ahead. And so, the process is actually each time that you wish to use the Visa card, you top up the card with your cryptocurrency gains that's already converted into fiat, right? So when you reach your goal, instead of having to sell it into money, like, or cash, and then you go and pay your credit card, we shorten the whole journey. So that in itself is something that gives all of us quite excitement, where we get to really drive mass adoption by the real use case through card, and with Visa's presence all around the world. I think with over 80 million merchants that accept this, right? So they actually get to accept crypto, but it's crypto that's already been converted into fiat. So there's no risk, and we get to play a little part in helping these businesses that wish to have something to do with this kind of new technology, but don't really wish to bear the risk. So we answer that. So that's one part. The other part, right? Nothing to do with cryptocurrency, nothing to do with buying and selling of any investment. One of the things that Betaza has been very kind of adamant about is to showcase other use cases of the blockchain. So we developed a business to business solution called the Freedom Wallet, which allows businesses, SMEs, and anyone to kind of replace their reward point system, from a plastic card or paper vouchers, or wristbands. We basically developed this to assist businesses with developing their loyalty program, or perhaps it's a situation where it's like a food court or some kind of membership, and the opportunities are endless. So this is something that Betaza has been very passionate about, helping small businesses or even large businesses, utilizing the technology that we have. So each businesses could have their own point system, and all of the information can be visited on the Betaza Thailand and Betaza Global pages. There will be some information there about all of this. But basically what I'm trying to say is that cryptocurrency is only one of the use cases of the blockchain technology, right? So it's also our commitment to showcase a lot more. And so when I think of Betaza, like I think of it as a super app where you could also you could buy and sell cryptocurrency. You could send it to a friend. You could send it overseas, right? Like when you have some gains that you are happy about, you can sell it into fiat. You could top up to your Visa card, and it links to some content hub. So we have a knowledge page, also content available in English at content.betaza.com, and so on and so forth. So we also thought about as I said, the Freedom Wallet part. This is something that we think about, right? Like if we developed our own super app, what about our partners, right? A lot of people invest a lot of resources to develop an app or kind of reward point system where you collect points. So with this, we support the businesses to kind of have their own super app and gain their own communities as well. So this is something that I think supports our vision of driving the crypto lifestyle. And I think the last part about this, right, is I think a lot of the viewers here today may be wondering, what else could I do with cryptocurrency, right? So there is a feature that is very well known in the cryptocurrency world called staking, right? So actually what this does is it's very similar to a long-term savings where you know that you're not going to touch this portion of your money, and then you put it in a bank, and then you get however much percentage of interest. So with cryptocurrency and the decentralization nature, as well as many different reasons, but here at Betaza, we just wish to showcase other activities that you could do with your cryptocurrency. So we recently, well, not really recently, we launched a staking campaign where with our own token BTZ, people can kind of put down and lock up their tokens for a yield of, let's say, between 8 to 25% when we launched this. Actually, the very, very first campaign that we did was 40% annual yield. So that is, to me, a very easy way and very easy to understand. And also, the way we did this basically was to reward the people who believe in us, right? In the long term, if you are investing in a platform that is licensed and regulated, and there's a clear roadmap of what we are, what problems in the world that we are solving. And when you believe in a company, it's kind of like getting a hand on some of the company stocks, So when you believe in the system, we reward our people who lock up our tokens with such groundbreaking percentage, because when you look at hyperinflation, right? You look at all of the debts rates, all of this, and you look at what Batasa is contributing to our users, no matter how small the lockup amount is, it's quite refreshing, and it's it's all coming from good intention. So we mentioned before, right? Like when there are things that are too good to be true, you have to question the agenda, right? So I can share right now that for us it's all about the long-term roadmap. It's all about building products. It's all about building an ecosystem that is a rewarding experience for all of our stakeholders, and not just business to consumers, but also business to business, also our contributors, also people who have helped us from the first day when we were very, very small, and now we've reached more than 800,000 downloads. Now we are just giving back to the people who had believed in us from the beginning, and it's been a really accelerating experience.
Wow. That was the last part was really inspiring. And I don't know. I had several points that I wrote, but I was blown away by from like what you said, from starting very small, and now you have more than 800,000 downloads, and
Yes.
that's the amount of people who actually believed in your community. Which leads me to the first point that I wrote earlier. On top of the use cases and everything, you emphasized on the importance of community, and building a community which like everyone would just rely on each other, would rely on each other and information, share information with each other. And I believe that is a strong point of that should be one of the strongest points of like a fintech, or like a startup or a company. That's why we're very keen here on Bixi on emphasizing that join our community, because it's where we build, a network. It's where we build each other. Bixi is quite very young as compared with Bitasa, but now I'm very inspired that one day we will also get hundreds of thousands of downloads. And to the second point that you mentioned is about having a long-term growth map and rewarding experiences. Rewarding those who were with you from the beginning, who actually invested with, let's say, with Bitasa from the very beginning. And that's also what I was thinking earlier. Yes, that we're still starting, but we would also want to reach that point where we have a large community, and we can also give back to the community who has been with us from the very start. And that's very inspiring though. So I am seeing a lot of questions here. And Eunice, do you want to start? Sorry, Didi, we have I think we will go a bit over time, but Eunice, do you want to start asking some questions from the audience?
Yes, actually. I mean, we've been mentioning a while ago, like for several times, just a few minutes ago, how promising and how important right now is cryptocurrency, and how it's useful for almost everyone when it comes to investment and savings. But there's a question here about cryptocurrency, although it's very accessible for everyone. Do you think that crypto could pave the way for financial literacy opportunities, or create more gaps between the middle class and those without access to financial literacy?
Very, very good question. I definitely think that right now the world is so like divided, right? And I definitely think that the traditional way of access to investment or banking services had a lot of gaps. And the system looked as though it was made so that it's it remains that way. We often think about equality. We often think about access to opportunities. We often think about education, and there's so many limitations in the current or previous systems. So when you think of what decentralization means, with taking away power from the few that make decisions for the rest, and allowing people who only require access to the internet and having a phone, which I'm going to assume that a lot of us are. I've heard many stories of people who are not able to actually reach banks, but at least have internet and phones, and therefore definitely I see that cryptocurrency reduces that gap, right? And what it does in a larger scale is it also shakes the system, whereby you see people who normally would not have access to investment opportunities getting into it, because, for example, at Betaza, we only the amount of investment to start is only $10, right? When you think about investing in equity, you require a lot more, and the system looks as though it's you kind of already have to be rich to invest, right? But in contrary, in cryptocurrency, you start with the $10 and you see where that takes you, right? So that in itself, the availability, the accessibility, as well as the required amount is quite low. And then when you think about it in another way, you see the players, or platforms, or cryptocurrency projects coming from more emerging markets, right? We're moving away, and this is borrowing some of this thought leadership from the co-founders at Betaza. We often talk about how when you think of investment in the old day, you think of Wall Street. When you think of technology, you think of Silicon Valley, right? It's very centralized. It's very Western world oriented. But you think of cryptocurrency, or the new financial technology projects and businesses coming out of Southeast Asia, coming out of Africa, coming out of Latin America or Eastern Europe. This is it's evident that the space is a lot more open and a lot more diverse than the old world of financial and technology. So that in itself, I think that is already speaking quite volume, that it doesn't matter where you sit in the world, even with Betaza, right? Like being Thai, having come from Thailand and having a platform that is originated here, and being fortunate enough to be coming from a country that supports this business, right, with regulations, and for us to have worked hard to earn our licenses, and then getting to take this platform to the world, like this gives me goosebumps already to think that small players like us get to have a shot at speaking to the region and potentially speaking to the world, because with cryptocurrency there's no boundaries. So I think definitely financial literacy, as the question here came, and also the services that we are building, that we are working on, will definitely address this heads on. So thank you so much for this question. I loved answering it. But okay, I think the gap between the middle class and those without access to financial literacy, this part I can address in a way, right, where actually access to financial literacy starts from education and knowledge, right? And back in the day, prior to the internet, a lot of people would have to have access to libraries. But thankfully enough, now you can just browse any information, right? As long as you verify that, do some due diligence, as mentioned before, that this is legitimate knowledge, then this gap is already bridged by this, and it doesn't have to, you don't have to start too far, right? So it's just listening to podcasts, right? Reading some articles, watching some YouTube videos. Information is everywhere, right? So you just have to weed through, some the good and the bad of the world, and I think that definitely this is offering some change and some revolution to what was previously structured for our society. Yeah.
Actually, I would like to highlight, or rather to pick up some points from what you mentioned, even like a few minutes ago, that I'm just really super excited to bring about to bring up, like the thing you mentioned about those too good to be true investments, fast investments, like the Ponzi scheme or like whatever. I mean, it's really true. Like with what you said, that when it comes to investing, it's a long term goal. It's a long term roadmap, or like plan, because like what you always say, nothing worth it comes easy, right? So
Mhm.
when it comes to investing, it really takes time, and as it takes time, like the other rewards that you would reap from it, it's really worth it, right? I mean, your the wait is worth it, and at the same time, I mean, people would take time to earn that money, right? So why invest it on something that is too good to be true, or that would guarantee you instant income, or rather instant investment, right? So I mean, why would you allow your money to vanish that quickly, where in fact you worked hard for it for a long time? And yes, I mean, we should be mindful of where and how we should spend our money, and we should trust the people with our money. I mean, we should always have that confidence, and never fool people about money, because money, even though it's a generic thing that can be earned, like I guess every day or something. I mean, money comes with trust, right? And and confidence as well. So don't be fooled, I guess, by those instant investment, instant income, too good to be true. Like a lot of people until now, I mean, they're investing their hard earned and long term earned money with those instant investments and stuff that would like leave them hanging, and leave them penniless eventually. So, you know, investing, it really takes time and patience, but it will be all worth it, right? I mean, that's what I really loved about what you said a while ago. So, Attorney Will, is there anything else that you want to add?
Yeah. No, I would connect your highlights to the next question because like you were saying, like I don't know if you would couch it like be careful or be mindful maybe with
Yes.
what you're getting yourself into. And
Yeah.
this is a good question. No, I'm gonna flash it on the screen. What's the one thing women should know when getting into investment and cryptocurrency for the first time?
Mm,
Yeah.
mm, mm, mm. I suppose the one thing, right, that I would say is that you should make decision based on logic and not feelings. And this is something that I think is centuries long of a debate, when often women are labeled or branded to be emotional and to be making decisions based on feelings, and not enough this and that, like logic and rationale. I'd like to actually argue about that point. A lot of women think with logic. A lot of women think with rationale. We have empathy as well as reasons. But I think that it's important to remember that anything that comes with financial investment, right? You have to, I suppose, use both. I think, on top of the women intuition, that's most of the time right. When it comes to the financial market, right, you must also think about the rationale and the logic, as mentioned at the beginning of our discussion, with setting your size of investment, right? Setting your goal of how long you can bear to watch the graph go up and down. Also, another thing to know would be who you're investing with, what platforms are they regulated? Are they licensed? Are they trustworthy? Is the team behind them know what they're doing? And then lastly, again, with the investment options, are these tokens accepted, established? Has this project been available for a long time, or was it created 3 months ago and it's giving some thousands of % yield? Suspicious, right? So I think that these are quite general tips, but I would say to be applied on when making these decisions and be rational. So when I say make decisions not on feelings, a lot of the times when you hear stories of people gaining or earning or becoming richer, more successful, again, with my point of getting rich quick, no such thing, guys, no such things. When you feel excited and you feel like, oh, following my friend who has been successful would make me also successful. No, but you should do your own research, right? So this is another point that I would make. And then it's nice to share knowledge and nice to share insights, but at the end of the day, we definitely have to combine the two with using our intuition to kind of gauge a situation, like, is this real? At the same time, backing it up with some logical researches and studies. Yeah. So start small, I would say.
I see. Thank you very much for that. Actually, we have a few people, or rather women, who are watching us today, who are young or who is about to enter into the workforce. So they have a question here. Where is it? So, what would be a good fit for first time investment for young people entering the workforce? Because I assume that these women as well are, apart from them being young and about to enter the workforce, we also consider these women as, of course, our big C ladies. So there, what would be a good first time investment for young people who are about to enter the workforce? Because I believe they're graduating in a few months. So there.
Okay, it's a good question, and I understand that young people who are not earning a lot yet could be thinking, okay, it's a good time to start. So I would say, right, but again, I'm not really equipped to give any financial advice. So I would look into the tokens that have been around for a long time, right? And then you catch the trend, and you catch kind of what value proposition this particular token would be, and then again, start small, right? So when you look at all of these opportunities, all of these options, the good thing about cryptocurrency versus other types of investment is that you can do a fraction of it. So let me mention Bitcoin, because it's one of the most notable cryptocurrencies in the world, right? Like there are institutional levels of investors. When you look at the trend, it's gone quite well from its origin, and the purpose of it is just a store of value. It doesn't really do anything. A lot of people compare it to digital gold. So if you believe in that, that would maybe be your choice. But when you look at a Bitcoin, there's no need to get a full Bitcoin, right? Like, even though, okay, today now the price is tanking a little bit, so I do have to mention that when you look at the past few months, or even half a year, it's been quite volatile. So the key here, right, is to realize that you could do a fraction of it. So it could be a 0.0000 something situation. And with a platform, for example, like the Taza, the investment only starts with $10. And for young people entering a workforce, if the idea is to afford going out with friends, eating out, then $10 could be your starting point as well. So I would say that again, as everybody here is exploring the idea, so I would say perhaps start with the $10 that you would spend easily on a day out with friends. So I would maybe go that direction. And when you think of any type of investment in the world, whether it's gold or equity or oil, $10 probably would not get you anywhere. So I guess cryptocurrency and a safe choice like a Bitcoin would be my suggestion. But then it all depends on how long or how patient you can become, which comes back to our points before. Yeah.
My goodness. So this 1 hour Big C Thursday life indeed is not enough, to like learn a lot of things
Yeah,
and to have
so
lots of
true.
takeaways. Actually, I was chatting with Attorney Bill a while ago that, oh my goodness, I wasn't mindful of the time that, when there's so much good stuff to talk about,
Hmm.
time is really short. It's like, oh my gosh, we lack time to talk about a lot of good stuff, especially when the topic and when the conversation, and most especially if the speaker is really well driven and enthusiastic about the topic, then time is really not enough. So
But of course,
uh
we're not this. We can always invite Didi again, right?
yes, of
Yeah.
course. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and one of the things that I would like to maybe add before we say goodbye is actually the fact that Betaza Global, which is a platform that Betaza has developed specifically for the international market, we recently launched a feature where you could deposit cash from the Philippines peso along with all the other many other currencies. So now you could onboard. So basically, you just download Betaza Global from your iOS or Google App Store or even Huawei Gallery, and the Betaza Global app is there. And when you go to deposits, we recently allow me to share with you all these currencies. So wherever you are in the world, you could be using our platform that is compliant and regulated in such a country like Thailand. And so, like, this makes me very excited because the timing could not have been more perfect. For us to talk about this opportunity to welcome our friends from the countries that I just shared now. So that would be really cool if we could maybe add a link into the video, or I can come, or one of the Betaza team can come and comment on the app, the download link. And
Yes.
we would really love to welcome all of the ladies that are watching the show today. And you know that at least there's a face to the brand. You know me, you've met me, and hopefully we get to drive Betaza in your respective countries, and then we'll see more of each other.
Thank you very much, Dee. Indeed, this Thursday is really, really productive and fruitful. We learned so much from you today. And of course, so before anything else and before we close the program, we would like to invite everyone, of course, to first download the app. Our app is free and available on App Store and on Google Play. And I would like to also promote the app of Didi Betaza. So feel free to download it also in both platforms mentioned for Bixi. And after you download the app, please be mindful of our new updates about the app. So first, the app for the app for the new releases, the tools has been added to the navigation bar, and the goals and what's my number is now both located on the tools part. And of course, for the vibe or the interface of our app, it's much lighter and brighter and very feminine, which is very pleasing to the eye. So you would be more enticed to stay on the app and to view it. And for the Knowledge Hub, you can search for articles, videos in the search bar, and you can bookmark those videos that you would like to watch even after, and the articles that you want to read even after as well. And you can also share the goals that you have achieved with the community or with the circle within the app. And most especially, you have to check out our banner in the homepage, which is the hot deals, where you can share it with your friends and family in the community. And lastly, we have updated our notifications part by having a notification bell at the upper right hand corner of the app. So speaking of the hot deals, we have two promos in the Bixi app that you can avail. So first, you can get your favorite Joy in a Bottle essential oil if you purchase them through the Bixi app, and you will get your 20% discount for every purchase of the essential oil through the Bixi app. So of course, you have to download the app. And second, there. And then second, apart from the essential oil, we also have your coffee fix. We got you with that. So you can purchase your favorite jurisprudence coffee with through the Bixi app, and you will get your exclusive 20% discount as well if you purchase the coffee or jurisprudence exclusively only through the Bixi app. So all you have to do is download the app and purchase your favorite essential oils and coffee fix through the app to get those
These
discounts.
look really great, Eunice. These look amazing, and I think Big C is doing some amazing things here. Helping businesses and specifically women. And I'm so happy that there's a community out there that's dedicated to us ladies, and I love this
Yes.
whole proposition of learn to earn, and all this big coins and everything. So we are very excited to see that there's this nice app out there. Oh, welcome back, Bill.
Yes. Actually, there's more to that. I mean, we will be having lots of merchants and online shops and other stores that will be included also with the hot deals or with the promos, in partnership also with Bixi. So for our users, there's so much more to look forward to under hot deals. So lastly, if you want to know what we're doing and what's your purpose, you can always access our Bixi white paper available at our website for you to know what's your purpose and what we do and what's your mission. So there, you can always access it through our website. And I guess that's it for a fun-filled and very fruitful Thursday. So apart from you downloading the Bixi app, please also download Bitaza's app as well. So Attorney Bill, do you have final words before we close this night?
Uh, Sorry, I was disconnected. I think it was my battery, rather my internet. But yeah, I think I'm disconnected on IG. But yeah, so thank you so much, Didi. This was a very, 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 oh, there, I'm back. Very, very productive conversation. It was I was just taking down notes because I also wanted to learn, because I'm also a very very beginner when it comes to digital assets, to cryptocurrency, and I also want to, especially as the days go by, I would I would want to also do something new and challenge myself in this new era. I'm saying new era. At least for me, it's a new era. So thank you so much for encouraging us tonight. Thank you for empowering us tonight. And my greatest takeaway maybe is, number one, as you mentioned earlier, we start small. Number two, knowledge, like research, due diligence, and all those information gathering stuff. As I mentioned earlier, we have available a knowledge section in our community app, in our Bixi app. And last but not least, the very importance of community. So that's my personal take home tonight. And I hope, and I'm sure the ladies who are watching tonight have a lot of take home points as well. So thank you so much, and I hope we could have you again, because we have so much more to learn, and of course to ask from you. Thank you so much, and thank you to all the Bixi ladies who make our live events possible every Thursday night. So thank you for
Thank you so
attending our
much for
meetups.
having
Yes.
me. Thanks so much for having me and just thinking of us. And we really look forward to seeing more of you guys in the future. So with the Bataza download link, we will be commenting in the Bixi's video on all the channels, so that you can download the right app make sure it's the right app because there are really also, a few scammers out there. But again, guys, thank you for your time and for everyone who's been sending messages here. I see some questions that were not answered. When I have some time, I might go and, answer and talk to the community. And really, again, thank you ladies for doing this, and Rosalia, who couldn't be here today, but it's really refreshing to see a community dedicated for women, and I just can't be more thankful, because now I'm empowered from Betasa and from my experience here. My job is really just to empower all you ladies and pay it forward as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And that's it, everyone, for our Big C Thursdays entitled Make It Right. So enjoy your Thursday and enjoy the rest of the week, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Sarika.